I find that most people I know carry two versions of themselves. The one the world sees, functional, composed, getting through the day, and the one that lives quietly underneath, reactive, ashamed, still waiting for something that never came. For a long time, I didn't have a name for the second version. I just knew it showed up at the worst times, in arguments that escalated faster than they should have, in relationships where I needed too much or gave too little, in the strange heaviness that settled in my chest for no reason I could explain. It took me years to understand that what I was carrying wasn't a personality flaw. It was an imprint, something laid down long before I was old enough to make sense of it. Researchers call it childhood trauma, not just the dramatic, visible kind, abuse, violence, disaster, but the quieter, slower kind too. The emotional neglect, the unpredictable parent, the childhood home where love existed, but safety didn't always. Psychologist Gabor Mate, who spent decades working with adults struggling with addiction, chronic illness, and emotional dysregulation, put it simply: trauma is not what happens to you. It's what happens inside you as a result of what happened to you. That distinction changed the way I understood myself, and the way I understood the people around me. 1. The wound is not the story you were told about it. There's a particular kind of pain that doesn't announce itself as pain. A woman I read about, I'll call her Sarah, grew up in a home that from the outside looked perfectly fine. 2 parents, stable income, no violence, but her mother was emotionally unavailable, and her father's approval came only with achievement. As a child, Sarah learned to read the room before she read books. She learned that her emotions were inconvenient. She learned to be small. By her 30s, Sarah was successful by every external measure. She was also exhausted, chronically anxious, and convinced somewhere beneath the surface that she was fundamentally too much and never enough, both at once. She had been told her childhood was fine, and she believed it. This is one of the most common traps in emotional healing, the story we were given about our own past. Many of us were handed a narrative. You were loved, you had it good, others had it worse. And we accepted it as truth, even as our nervous systems told a different story entirely. The body, as trauma researcher Bessel van der Kolk wrote, keeps the score. It remembers what the mind has been trained to minimize. 2. Healing begins not with fixing, but with seeing. For most of human history, we didn't have language for this. People carried their wounds forward, passed them to their children, and called it life. But in the last 2 decades, something has shifted. Neuroimaging research has shown that prolonged childhood stress physically alters brain development, particularly in the regions responsible for emotional regulation, memory, and the stress response. This isn't metaphor, this is measurable. Children who grow up in emotionally unsafe environments develop nervous systems wired for threat detection. As adults, they find themselves bracing for impact in rooms where there is no danger. Understanding this was, for many people, the beginning of something. Not because it excused the past, but because it replaced shame with comprehension. I am not broken. My system adapted. And adaptation, unlike identity, can change. That reframe, small as it sounds, is where healing tends to begin. The most important relationship you will repair is the one with yourself. I spent a long time believing that healing was something that happened in a dramatic moment. A confrontation, a breakthrough in a therapist's office, an apology from someone who would never give one. What I found, and what researchers increasingly confirm, is that healing is less of an event and more of a practice, a daily, unglamorous process of choosing to respond rather than react, of noticing the old pattern before it finishes running. Psychologist Kristin Neff, whose work on self-compassion has been studied across dozens of countries, found something striking. The people most resistant to self-compassion are often those who need it most. Individuals with difficult childhoods frequently internalized a harsh inner critic so early and so completely that it feels like truth. Treating themselves with kindness feels not just uncomfortable, it feels unearned. But her research showed that self-compassion, simply acknowledging pain without judgment and responding to yourself with the warmth you'd offer a struggling friend, measurably reduced anxiety, depression, and shame over time. This is not self-indulgence. This is neuroscience. 4. You can grieve a childhood that wasn't obviously terrible. One of the most underacknowledged forms of grief is mourning what was never there. The father who was physically present but emotionally absent. The mother who loved you but couldn't attune to you. The version of childhood where you felt truly, unconditionally safe, that many of us never had, and never knew we were missing until adulthood made the absence visible. Grief, in this context, doesn't mean collapsing into the past. It means acknowledging the loss honestly, so you stop unconsciously trying to recover it from people who cannot give it, partners, employers, strangers on the internet. Therapist and author Lindsay Gibson, who wrote Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents, observed that many of her clients spent decades trying to earn a retroactive approval that would never come. The healing came when they stopped waiting and started parenting themselves, meeting their own needs with the consistency and care they had always needed from someone else. 5. Change is slower than you want it to be. That doesn't mean it isn't happening. Healing from childhood trauma is not linear. It does not follow a schedule. There are weeks that feel like progress and weeks that feel like regression. And the difference between the two is often just how much sleep you got or how much stress you're carrying from somewhere else entirely. What research on neuroplasticity has confirmed, and what people who've been through it will tell you if you ask, is that the brain retains the capacity to change throughout life. New patterns can be built. Old responses can be softened. The nervous system can learn slowly that safety is real. But this happens through repetition, not revelation, through small moments of choosing differently, through relationships where you risk being known and are not punished for it, through the slow accumulation of evidence that the world is not always what your childhood taught you to expect. As I reflect on all of this, one thing stands out. The people who heal, not perfectly but genuinely, are not the ones who had it easiest. They are the ones who are willing to look at what happened, name it honestly, and decide that the story written in their childhood did not have to be the final draft. That decision is not made once. It's made again and again, quietly, in ordinary moments. And that, I think, is what courage actually looks like.